Good evening, and welcome back, poetry lovers. This is ZM Wise, and here I am with another home recording just for you. Now, this is Poems of the Elder Edda. It's a book review, and this is a revised edition translated by Patricia Terry. Now, this particular edition was released. Well, the first edition was published in 1969, and then this was published in 1990. So, 26-year-old book right here, but still quite informative, very insightful. If it weren't for these poems, we wouldn't have characters like Odin, Thor, Loki, Ragnarok, Valkyries, Valhalla. This is the oldest form of Norse poetry right here. These series of poems are compiled to make this epic, and there are plenty of different tales and lays. And in this book, a lay means a song. Of course, it's a very old term. Now, what struck me about this particular edition are some of the notes in here. I love buying certain used books where the reader would insert their own notes on the pages. And certain pieces in this book are derivative of certain biblical themes and maybe tales from other countries. A particular piece, Sayings of the High One, and the High One is known as Odin. What really captured me and captivated my soul was in this certain section. It's not really a specific tale. It's sort of like biblical proverbs. Each stanza is a different saying. For example, a stupid man stays awake all night pondering his problems. He's worn out when morning comes, and whatever was, still is. Another one. The foolish man thinks everyone his friend who laughs when he does, then he sees that few will take his side when his case comes to court. So it's a lot of wisdom being imparted in these pages, I'd like to say. Some of them aren't as up to date, of course, but a lot of them are quite universal. And then there's another section. It was my favorite, actually. The Lay of Alvis. And Alvis is this dwarf, actually. And included in here are two races, dwarves and elves, and Norse were one of the first people to talk about them and refer to them as such. What I love, though, is this is a conversation between Thor and Alvis, the dwarf, and the whole point is a distraction. It's a ploy, and Thor keeps asking him all these questions about what do people call this? What do people call that? And Alvis would say, well, these people call it this. And I love it because in each of Alvis's stanzas, he lists about 4 or 5 different races, and they have different names for everything. For example, the sun, the moon. Let me give you an example. Thor said, "Tell me, Alvis, dwarf, I think you know all that has ever happened. What is the moon called that men can see in every one of the worlds?" Alvis said, "Men say the moon, but gods, false sun, in hell it's whirling wheel. For giants, speeder, for dwarfs it's shining one. Elves call it counter of years." I noticed with the elves' interpretation of everything, whether it's the sun, the moon, the rain, what have you, it's more calm and serene. And giants have a more primitive interpretation. I'll give you another example. me see. Thor said, "Tell me, Alvis, dwarf, I think you know all that has ever happened. What is the sea on which men sail, in every one of the worlds?" Alvis said, "Men call it sea, the gods smooth plain, for the wise Vanir its waves, eel home for giants, wet rooms for elves, dwarves have named it the deep." So, and in the end, at the end of this piece, Thor ends up tricking him into giving him all these explanations, all of this information, and he eventually kills him. So, what a way to repay someone, huh? But that's Thor for you, brawn over brain. Let me see here. Now, with certain pieces, uh, for epic poems, I've noticed, especially the earlier they are, they're more direct. There's not exactly a rhyme scheme per se, but it has a certain flow attached to it, much like the Epic of Gilgamesh. Let me see, find a good example. And what's great about this edition is that at the end of each piece, there are notes about the piece, just in case you have no idea whatsoever. Let me see here. Well, I might as well go to the notes after Alvis. Alvis means the all-wise. The dwarf was, however, not wise enough to watch out for the sunlight, which was clearly fatal to him. The dwarf's name for sun in stanza 16, Dvalin's delight, is ironic. Dvalin is among the dwarfs listed in the presumably interpolated catalogue in Voluspa. Snorri explains that dwarfs started out as maggots born in the flesh of the first being, the giant Ymir. The gods gave them human minds and appearance, but they continued to live under the ground. Yeah. In a way, this sort of reminded me of that one part in The Hobbit, in that book, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, where I believe Bilbo kept distracting the trolls before they were about to eat the dwarves. Just kept stalling them until the sun came out and turned them all to stone. Quite the distraction method. And as I said, a lot of these are derivative of other poems of other nationalities, but I love it very much. This is a wonderful book. I'd recommend it to you, especially if you are a lover of poetry or literature, or even a student in Norway. Definitely check this out. Poems of the Elder Edda. And there's, of course, also the Poetic Edda. It's more updated. And there's also the Younger Edda. Believe it or not, there's a book called the Younger Edda, but it's mostly prose. So, anyway, check this book out, or even better, buy it. Poetry lives!